We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including plenty of offseason trade speculation. If Mitch Marner departs Toronto, could it possibly be via a sign-in trade so that the Leafs actually don't lose him for nothing and get some sort of a return? We'll discuss the possibility and a likely destination if that were to happen. Plus, we also have word that the Montreal Canadiens may be a preferred destination for a veteran winger that might be on the move this offseason. Plus, we have the latest trade talk around some young RFAs between the New York Rangers and the Buffalo Sabres. We have updates from the Memorial Cup. We have updates from the Stanley Cup playoffs, including a significant injury to one of the top 6 players for the Edmonton Oilers in Zach Hyman. Plus, we have some signings and other news around the league as well, including some other updates regarding some serious injuries, including one in Winnipeg. More coaching updates as well coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today as well. All kinds of stuff. Let's start first with the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, last night we saw the Edmonton Oilers take a pretty commanding 3-1 stranglehold on the series in the Western Conference Final with the Dallas Stars. The Edmonton Oilers are getting great goaltending from Stuart Skinner right now. They're getting scoring from up and down the lineup, and really has been a pretty dominant performance. I think Dallas actually had a pretty good start to last night's game. They had a really strong first period, but it just seems like when they do seem to pour on the opportunities, that they're not getting the goals. A lot of the Dallas top forwards are having a really rough series. You look at Wyatt Johnson's had a rough playoffs. Robertson's scored a couple of goals lately, but for the most part has been quiet since his return. Even Mikko Rantanen, you look at his numbers in the playoffs, and they look impressive, but you got to remember that 2 or 3 games is where the bulk of those points and goals came from. He's had a lot of quiet games really ever since the beginning of the Winnipeg series. The last couple against the Avalanches, when he got hot, it carried over to game 1 against the Jets, and then he's been pretty quiet ever since. So the Dallas Stars have not scored a 5-on-5 goal against the Oilers here in a little bit. The one goal they got last night in the 4-1 loss was a power play goal, so certainly they need to find some offense, and they need to find it in a hurry, or they're going to be doomed. Zach Hyman left last night's game about 10, 11 minutes into the first period, and after a collision with Mason Marchment, I'm surprised there was no call, to be honest, because I think there could have been multiple different infractions called in that play, but Zach Hyman ended up with a broken wrist. He's having surgery, or I think he actually had surgery today, so he is out for the remainder of the playoffs. That is a big blow for the Edmonton Oilers. Hyman's been a physical presence, been an offensive presence, and plays a big role for them in a variety of situations. So he's not easy to replace, and that's something that they're going to have to do by committee. Thankfully, the Oilers' depth have been pretty tested and coming up big for them in this playoffs, and they're going to have to continue to do so with his absence. Of course, tonight we get the Carolina Hurricanes trying to stave off elimination for the second consecutive game. They managed to win Game 4 to keep the series alive and take it to 3-1. Now they're back home in Raleigh, hoping to extend it to Game 6. So Game 5 tonight. As I record this video, the Canes have had a really good first period. A couple of goals from Sebastian Aho have them up with a 2-0 lead at the first intermission, but there's plenty of hockey left in that one. Reinhart, Mikkola, and Greer all back in the lineup tonight for the Florida Panthers. Of course, we get lots of updates coming tomorrow, things we're going to learn, a couple of press conferences to be aware of. The New York Islanders are holding a presser at, I believe it is 11 a.m. Eastern time, to introduce new general manager Matthew Darche. Hopefully we'll get some clarity on what he intends to do with his staff, the coaching staff, and just to give an idea on the direction of the team. The future of Patrick Waugh is certainly something that a lot of people are waiting for confirmation on. A lot of people are expecting him to give Waugh a vote of confidence and to retain him. He is on a longer-term contract, but it is quite possible that they may give Waugh more say on his staff and let him kind of pick his assistants. That's something that is being kind of speculated around the Islanders. So we'll see what happens, but we'll be curious to see what Darche has to say tomorrow morning. And the Toronto Maple Leafs will also be holding a conference tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, so these two will be an hour apart, where GM Brad Treliving will finally do his end-of-season media availability tomorrow. He's been meeting over the last few days with Keith Pelley, the CEO of MLSE, and we'll see what we learn. We know that there's not any changes with their coaching staff or anything like that. The big thing that we may learn would be any other changes to hockey ops, because there's a lot of speculation about things being streamlined, maybe other positions within the support staff maybe being reduced or eliminated. So we'll see about that. Or we may learn just to get an idea of the vision on player movement and what to expect that front. So we'll see what Brad has to say tomorrow. A couple of big signings in the Utah Mammoth organization, and obviously it might sound corny, but these are Mammoth signings for Utah. Two really top end players that are huge in size as well. But Utah has signed two former first round picks from 2023. I know there were some that thought they might have went off the board here a little bit, but they were two Russian players that they were really high on, who they had a really good playoff run over in the KHL and are both coming over together here. They were teammates in Russia as well. But Danila Bu, 6'6" right winger, and Dmitry Simashev, 6'5" defenseman, both taken number 6 and number 12 in the 2023 NHL draft. Both signed their 3-year entry-level contracts today. So they are talented players that were taken high in the first round that Utah was really high on, and they are both massive human beings. So obviously, like I said, it's not just a Mammoth signing from a team name perspective, but these are some big boys. So we'll be curious to see how they come into training camp and what their roles might be. But there's some instant size there added on the back end and on the wing for next season, which could be a big move for them. The Seattle Kraken today confirmed they've signed John Hayden to a 2-year one-way extension at league minimum $775,000. So Hayden will be sticking around in the Kraken organization over the next couple of years. We also learned that Jets captain Adam Lowry was dealing with a fairly significant injury as well during the playoffs and required hip surgery, which he's now had successfully, and is going to be recovering for about 5 to 6 months. So that most likely means that he misses training camp and probably the beginning of the season as well. He may miss 4, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It's hard to say exactly what time in the regular season he comes back. So that's going to be a big blow for them to start the year without one of their top centers, with their captain, and just a great leader who plays in a variety of situations for them. So obviously, when he needs a surgery, you got to do what you got to do. But it's just not going to be good to start next year. So obviously he's one of the first more significant players we've learned of having a significant surgery here after the playoffs, and he wasn't even somebody we knew was dealing with much. So goes to show you what these players are playing through and that they keep hidden in secret from everybody around. The Chicago Blackhawks, of course, we now have a new head coach in Jeff Blashill. He spoke to the media today as well. We already had some changes or additions to his coaching staff, and we're expected to have confirmation that they're also adding Mike Vellucci as well. Vellucci, of course, was with Team USA, just got back from the World Championships, and he actually was interviewing for some of the vacant head coaching jobs, which he hasn't been successful in grabbing, and is expected, like I said, to be added as an assistant coach under Blashill with the Chicago Blackhawks. Some updates from the Memorial Cup. We had a big game, probably the most anticipated game of the tournament last night, which was the London Knights against the Medicine Hat Tigers. Many consider those two teams to be the strongest team out of the four-team group that are there competing for this championship. The Western Conference or Western League champions and the Ontario champions do seem to have a bit of an edge on both of the Quebec teams in this tournament. Of course, the Rimouski Oceanic are the host team from the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, and we also have the Moncton Wildcats, who are the Quebec League champions in this tournament. So London fell to Medicine Hat. It was a 3-1 Medicine Hat win, so they're undefeated. So they went 3-0 in the preliminary round. So that's the team led by Gavin McKenna, the consensus at this point number 1 overall draft pick in next year's draft. Lots of other great talent on that team as well, including Caden Lindstrom, Tanner Molendijk, and others. So they go 3-0. So London now will have to play in a semifinal. So how this works, the top team advances to the final, the bottom team is eliminated, and then the other two teams will play a semifinal for the right to go play in the championship game against the Medicine Hat Tigers. So London is right now secured to not be the bottom team, so they're in the semifinal. And then tonight we have the Moncton Wildcats against the Rimouski Oceanic, who they just did a hard-fought playoff series to determine the Quebec League champions in a 6-game battle. So they know each other very, very well. Moncton has a 3-2 lead as on that game right now in the second intermission. We'll see what happens. So obviously Moncton would normally be favored over Rimouski where they beat them in a playoff series, but this is a short tournament. It's a one-game, have a chance to advance here. The Rimouski Oceanic are the host home team. They don't want to be giving their fans a disappointment here. They want to be able to move on. But London, like I said, will face the winner, and then the winner of that will go on to face Medicine Hat to determine the Supreme Canada junior team will win the Memorial Cup. So we'll see where things go. Now, on the NHL rumor mill for the offseason, lots of stuff going on here today. A couple of smaller, we'll say, less high-profile names, and then we'll get into the bigger stuff. But one, we know that the Buffalo Sabres have a lot of things on the move, or in play, you should say. They are a team that will be interesting to watch. We know they made the big trade with the Senators near the deadline, the Dylan Cousins, Josh Norris trade. And there could be a lot more stuff on the go. They've been out of the playoffs for 14 years. GM Kevin Adams is very much under pressure to make some changes and get this team to have a better chance at playoffs next year. So we know they're going to be active. We've heard about Bowen Byram plenty. We know he's out there expecting a trade. We know that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is a player to possibly watch as well. Not for sure thing that he gets moved, but his name has been out there plenty after having a down season after signing an extension. They have to definitely reevaluate their goaltending. I think that's fair to say as well. We heard yesterday with Frank Saravalli's new trade bait board that JJ Peterka is number one on his list. And the main reason Peterka is on that list so high, it's not even so much because the Sabres don't want to trade this guy, but he is not happy, and he basically sounds like he has not officially requested a trade, but he's basically kind of made it known he's not thrilled and would like to be moved before signing a contract. So that's not good news for the Sabres when they can't keep their young players who have star potential like Peterka. But another name that came up today on the After the Whistle podcast, of course, a couple former Sabres players run that one, is Jack Quinn, wondering what the market is for him. The Sabres are gauging the market, you could say, from what they've heard on Jack Quinn's trade availability here. So obviously we know that he's a player that has talent. It was a high first-round pick, has had inconsistencies. He's battled a lot of injuries, had his moments, but there's still some that think he's a 20 to 25, maybe even a 30 goal scorer. But some also wonder, is he have a high enough compete level? Is he a guy you could win with? There's all these questions, right? So there is a possibility that he is a player that gets moved. Wouldn't be shocking if he's a player that gets signed and maybe he sticks around a little bit longer. But they're certainly gauging the value of him on the market to see if it's worth a trade or if they should maybe consider hanging on a little bit longer. So another name from the Sabres to add to the mix of guys that are potentially on the move. And of course, we heard from Elliot Friedman on his podcast this morning, confirming as well that the Rangers are basically doing the same with K-Andre Miller. Miller's a name we've heard kind of in and out of the rumor mill the last several weeks here since the season ended. The Rangers, I guess, are... The big thing with them is I think they're going to continue to probably remodel that blue line, and there's probably going to still be some players that are shipped out and new players brought in. And in Miller's case, I think, he's an RFA, so they're debating, do they want to give him that next contract, or are they better off to move him for a different type of defenseman? So they're gauging the value on the open market to say, okay, if we were to trade him, what kind of return could we be looking at? What's that going to be worth to us compared to maybe signing him. So again, not a given he gets moved, but it's something that they're certainly seriously considering, to say the least. A couple items around the Toronto Maple Leafs. One, there's lots of talk amongst Toronto media that they need and they do not have a true top number one defenseman. And that, when it's all said and done, maybe that's what they should be targeting more than anything else. If they lose Mitch Marner, either to free agency or, as we're going to talk about, through a sign and trade, either way, if Marner's not back next year, maybe that money that he would have, the cap space they're going to gain from him not being there or being re-signed, maybe that should be invested into a true top defenseman. And as the guy that they have right now in that role is Morgan Rielly. And a lot of people just don't think that he's the guy. Now, there's still Morgan Rielly supporters out there that think that it'd be a mistake to trade him. Now, the other thing that would complicate things is Morgan Rielly has a no-move clause. So even if they want to and they decide it's a good idea, they still need him to be on board. So it's not going to be easy to do. But there's a lot of media I've seen suggest that they really need to talk to Rielly this offseason and say, listen, like, you're the longest tenured Leaf. We feel like it'd be better for you, better for us if we had a change. Where could we consider sending you? Like, what teams would you be willing to waive for? And just kind of gauge where he's at in his life and his mind to see where things stand. If he absolutely refuses to waive and says, no, I'm not going anywhere, you're kind of stuck. But he would be a player between the space saved from Marner and moving his contract, which has like 4 or 5 years left on it, so it's not the most favorable contract, really. Like, I don't think he's lived up to the amount of money he's getting paid at $7.5 million. That they could find if they now, not easier said than done too, right? Just because they say, okay, this is what we need. Good luck finding it and getting a trade to work out. It's not going to be an easy task. But we know Treliving is always has a big focus on the blue line, and he's already done that. He's had a big focus on the blue line. Look what he's brought in. He brought in Tanev. He brought in, he signed Hakanpää, which clearly was a mistake. He won't be back. He signed Ekman Larsson. He's worked out pretty well. Obviously they've got Jake McCabe there. I think they like him. He's a nice physical defenseman that can play in your second pair. They can use McCabe Tanev as a shutdown type of D. They like Benoit. I think there's a pretty good chance he returns. But they really need an elect puck mover. And again, easier said than done, I know. So I guess there's a lot of people that believe that they will talk to Rielly and see what they can do on that front. Now, like I said, could Marner leave via sign and trade instead of just walking through free agency? Because the one advantage that the Maple Leafs have is they can offer an 8th year. If it makes it to July 1st and the contract's fully expired, regardless if he signs in Toronto or anywhere else, it's going to be a max term of 7 years. And maybe Marner doesn't overly care too much about that. We don't really know. But obviously, at the stage of his career that he's at, getting into his later 20s, this contract, if he did do an 8-year deal, you're going to take him up to age 35, 36 or whatever it is that he's going to be expiring. So it's going to be the remainder basically of his, what you'd call his prime years, and then towards the tail end, right? So you'd expect probably a tail off near the end of it, as Father Time typically, unfortunately is undefeated and gets the best of us here. So, it's probably fair to say that Marner's production throughout the contract could, go not be linear, kind of peak and kind of, but should level out is kind of the hope, right? So, obviously, like I said, the Leafs have that advantage of an 8th year. If they are insistent on going to market, I know that the Leafs were reportedly wanting to get some clarity, if they could, between Marner and his agent. What are the odds of you signing here? Like, should we be looking elsewhere? Should we be figuring out, contingency plans on how to replace you or how to use our cap space without you not being here or what have you? Is there a chance if you want to go to another team, could they do a sign and trade? Now, Frank Saravalli on his live show today made some comments, as well as on, I think he also did a radio hit on Sportsnet, and he mentioned Vegas being a great landing spot and thinks that would be a team that would be all over that. So, again, we know Vegas, every time a big top-notch player is available, they seem to be in on it. So would it be shocking? No, it wouldn't. Obviously, they've got Jack Eichel as the top center, Mark Stone. They do have lots of other high-end talent there. On the back end, would they... I wonder what they would offer in a potential sign and trade. Could the Leafs get a defenseman out of Vegas that they really like? Is there any chance they could pry, Theodore or Pietrangelo out of there? I know that Pietrangelo had been previously linked hard to the Leafs, being an Ontario guy long before he ever signed that long-term extension with Vegas as a free agent. So, I don't know. I don't know that they're necessarily going to get a return that big. Typically on a sign-in trade, it just really boils down to what's included. Like, look, that's what Matthew Tkachuk ended up doing, right? And look how that deal with Florida worked out. That was a big pieces involved. You got Huberdeau and Uyghur going to the Calgary Flames, right? So, it's you're getting Mitch Marner on an 8-year deal. You're going to have to pay something. It's got to be something decent, but at the same time, like I said, it's tricky. It's very tricky. But would Vegas be in on that? I wouldn't be surprised. They are in on all the top players, and after losing, a few years earlier in the playoffs than they would have liked after winning the Stanley Cup, I can see them trying to make some big moves. We know that they're not afraid to be aggressive. We know they're not afraid to do things that might even tick people off. You know, like they're not much loyalty in their organization, as they are as cutthroat as they get, because they want to win at all costs. So we'll see if Vegas is a landing spot. Of course, no state tax as well. So, you know, an advantage that way. They might be able to get Marner to agree for a little bit less money because of the tax situation. Could be an advantage that way. We'll have to wait and see. But let me know your thoughts on the possibility of Marner heading to Vegas, not only via free agency, but maybe through sign and trade to get a return for the Leafs and to get the extra year for Marner. And lastly, here I want to touch on another tidbit here. This one could be very interesting as well. Frank Rielly today also made mention that Jonathan Marchessault of the Nashville Predators, who we know Hayden, Stamkos, Brady Shea, they all signed big free agent deals last year, and it looked like Barry Trotz and the Predators won the offseason, but they certainly lost the regular season and had a terrible result. So, you know, it's no surprise to hear that they want to get younger in a hurry. They want to probably try to move what they can of these older, longer-term contracts that they did, at least one of them. And Marchessault is probably the most likely guy to go. Doesn't have as much trade protection and a little bit less money, so it's probably a little bit more feasible. And the belief is, according to Frank, that one team he'd be open to going to would be Montreal. It would be a bit of a homecoming. Of course, he's from Quebec. And apparently last year during free agency, when he signed with the Nashville Predators, the Montreal Canadiens were very much in the mix. And they are kind of considered to be like the runners-up, if you will. The main difference from what we've heard between Nashville and Montreal's negotiations with Marchessault was that Montreal did not want to give him the same type of term. I think they were fine with the AAV. They're fine with the money aspect of it, but they did not want to go the number of years that he ended up getting in Nashville. They were more comfortable with a shorter term. Obviously, he signed for 5 years. That was only 1 year ago, 4 years left. I think they were happier with 3. So, you know, if they can get him on a 4-year contract, you know, I don't know what they would be willing to give up for it, but it could be an interesting scenario. I wonder, too, when it comes to Marchessault, knowing that Montreal's home for him, if they can't make it work because, you know, but if they're not interested because of the term, I wonder if because it wouldn't be far from home and it's still a bilingual community, and we know they want to add a top 6. I wonder about Ottawa. You know, the only concern with Ottawa is that they're expected to re-sign Claude Giroux. I think they need to add more speed to that lineup. Now, Marchessault would be another veteran, you know, leader who has a Stanley Cup and great experience. Like he would be great in many ways, but he's not exactly a speedy guy. Like he's not super fast. He's getting up there in years. They got Perron, they got Giroux. You know, do they need another aging forward? Yes, he's productive and can be, but should they be trying to find a player of a different age group that might be able to grow with the team instead of what he brings? I mean, I think there's pros and cons of it, and I don't know if he's open to going to the Senators, but Montreal reportedly would be his preferred. So we'll see what happens. Either way, it sounds like he's open to a trade if the team can find something that he's happy with. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors. Marchessault to Montreal, Marner to Vegas. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.